So my name's Cheryl Richardson. I'm a personal coach, and I've written 4 books, and I'm working on my 5th book right now, and travel around the country doing a lot of speaking, a lot of media about coaching and the kinds of practical tools and advice we need to improve the quality of our lives. I've done Good Morning America and the Today Show and the Oprah Winfrey Show, and I'm always very interested in learning and growing, both for myself personally and also sharing it with my readers and audience members. And I host a large online community at CherylRichardson.com where, and it was online that I first learned about EFT many, many years ago, and have used that as a secret weapon many times and not so secret at other times to really help both myself and other people get over the kinds of obstacles that prevent them from living great lives. Well, the first time I was exposed to EFT was through my husband, Michael Garish, who's a fitness expert. And he's a psychotherapist and an exercise physiologist, and he had started studying tapping therapies and had been introduced to EFT. And I heard him talk about some of the amazing things that were happening with the clients that he worked with. I remember one woman he worked with had been a professional skier and had an accident and broke her leg and could not get on a slope. She was too afraid, and I remember he came home and said to me, "You're not going to believe what happened." This was in the beginning when he first started using it. "You're not going to believe what happened. I used the tapping therapy on my client, and she went skiing that weekend for the first time in years." And I thought, well, this is kind of interesting, but it seemed a little too good to be true. And he and I were flying cross country. I was speaking in California, and he was with me, and I was a very nervous flyer at the time, and I had had a very bad flight in my early 20s, so I really didn't like to fly at all. And while we were flying, we hit really bad turbulence, and I started to panic. And he taught me EFT in that moment on the plane while I was panicking, and within 3 minutes, not only was I calm and relaxed, but the rest of the flight, even though turbulence continued off and on, I had no problem whatsoever. And that's when I went, all right, there's something to this. This is worth checking out. I think that people who are open to EFT are naturally open-minded. They are natural learners. They tend to be original thinkers and, are interested in health and wellness and well-being, have been interested, are sort of constantly learning and upgrading their skills and always looking for something that will really, particularly, healers, people who are healing are always looking for some kind of tool or technique, usually that will heal them first, that will support them in some way, and when it starts to work, they get inspired and excited and start sharing it with other people. People who really believe in the innate wisdom of the human body are the kind of people that are going to be open to things like EFT and energy psychology. The reason that I think EFT is so beneficial is because it works in so many ways, so many great ways. I mean, all of us as human beings get scared, we get anxious, especially in this day and age when many of us are so overwhelmed and stressed out. We have fears about things, certain phobias about things. Lots of people are afraid to speak in public, or they're afraid to fly, or they have phobias about snakes or animals or something like that. I mean, we all have something that we tend to be afraid of or to feel anxious about. And so it becomes a wonderful little tool that you can actually teach clients. That's what I love about it. Not only do I use it in my life, but you can actually, when I'm sharing it with somebody else, I love the idea that you can teach somebody to use it, and it very often will quickly improve the quality of their life and leave them feeling more confident, because now they know, wow, I just learned this strange thing, it actually worked for me, and I can take it with me and use it. So for example, when I'm working with people who have a fear of public speaking, it's a great technique to use just before you go on stage. And once the person uses it and they feel calmer and they're able to go ahead and speak, it now gives them an opportunity to express their talents and gifts in the way that they were probably meant to express their talents and gifts, but they couldn't because of that block. So in that way, EFT releases people from the chains that keep them bound to a mediocre life. And it also allows people to fully express the greatness of who they are. Yes, so let's say, for example, there's a certain goal that you want to reach, like you want to become debt-free. And there's a reason why you're in debt in the first place. So if we start to explore what those reasons are, usually we'll see there's a block about something, or there's a fear about something. Maybe you're afraid to look at your bills to be paid folder, or maybe there was a lot of anxiety about money when you were growing up. And so in that regard, you can decide on what the goal is, decide on the action steps you need to take to achieve the goal, and then look at what it is that might prevent you from achieving that goal. And you can start to use EFT as one of the tools. It's not the only tool, but as one of the tools that can start removing those blocks so that you're able to achieve your goals. Absolutely. One of the great things about EFT and the whole energy psychology movement is the more we work on keeping ourselves balanced energetically using these kinds of tools, the more attractive we become. And I'm not talking about physical beauty necessarily, although I'm sure that's part of it as well, but I'm talking about energetically. As we start to put our energy, the energy body, into balance, we naturally begin to allow wonderful things to come into our life. We start attracting wonderful things into our life. Now, it's not as simple as do an EFT technique and, you'll get that new car. I'm not suggesting that that's simplistic, because a lot of EFT is about looking at what are the obstacles, what are the traumas, what are the moments in time where you formed a belief about something that keeps you stuck, and really working through those and working through the different levels as well. But that said, I think also using EFT almost as like a daily beauty treatment, if you will, or a daily attractive treatment, is a way to just keep the energy system, keep your body's energy system, your energy system, finely tuned. And when it's finely tuned, you naturally, it's kind of like we all know, if you go out during the day and you're in a good mood and you're smiling, people smile back, and if you go out and you're feeling grumpy or upset and you're frowning and you're frustrated or impatient, people tend to move away. It's really, we all know that. So that's just a wonderful little example of how keeping your energy clear, balancing your energy, really allows you to draw better things into your life. Well, I remember working with a colleague of mine, a mother of 3 small girls. We were traveling together, and we were having dinner one night, and she was sharing with me that she smoked cigarettes, and that she was really embarrassed that she smoked cigarettes. And she also really felt horrible being a mother of 3 small girls and smoking cigarettes. And so I said to her, I have this little technique called EFT, and again, I explained about the body's energy system and how it was this odd little tool, but that it might help her. And I told her that, if she wanted, I would teach her the technique to help her possibly quit smoking. I'd never used it for smoking before, but I figured, what the heck, I use it for everything. And I started to treat her, and just using the setup phrase, I said to her, I want you to start with, even though I smoke, I fully and completely accept and love myself. Or even though I smoke, I deeply and profoundly accept myself. Even though I'm a mom and I smoke, I deeply and profoundly accept myself. Even though I'm smoking and it sets a bad example for my children, I deeply and profoundly accept myself. And she burst into tears. And I could see really clearly, it was almost like I could see her block. I knew that the self-loathing she felt about smoking, the way that she beat herself up about smoking, was the actual thing that locked it in place. And so within 5 minutes of treating her, she said she had no desire to smoke whatsoever, and quit smoking and stopped for good, hadn't smoked again. So in that regard, not only was it helping her health, improving her health, but it was making a dramatic impact on her emotional and physical health, but also her children's lives as well. One of the most powerful things, one of the most powerful aspects of the treatment of EFT, I personally believe, is the setup statement, where we ask people, or where I say to myself, even though I feel blank, or even though I do blank, whatever the action or the thought or the belief might be, the negative thought or belief might be, I accept myself fully anyways. I think that's the most powerful aspect of EFT, because if there's one thing I've learned over the last 8 years of using EFT, is that what locks our fear in place, our anxiety in place, our inability to take action, our inability to achieve the kind of life we want to achieve, is a lack of self-forgiveness and a lack of self-acceptance. I mean, if there's one thing that's become really clear to me is the direct connection between energy, or the blocking of energy, and an inability to love oneself. And I've just seen it so many times because I have felt it as someone who has used EFT both on my own and with a practitioner. I have felt the resistance to want to say, even though I'm afraid to get on stage, I deeply and profoundly accept myself, or even though I feel terrified about flying, you know, whatever the resistance might be, even though I hate myself right now for the way I'm feeling, I fully and completely accept myself. I have felt what it feels, that the release that comes from embracing and accepting the fullness of who we are. And I've seen it time and time again with people where there's such resistance to accept and own the fullness of who we are. And it's that resistance that keeps us stuck. And so a lot of times people will say to me, you know, I'll say to somebody, even though I smoke or even though I drink too much, I deeply and profoundly accept myself. And the person will look at me and say, I don't want to say that. I don't want to reinforce that, you know, that belief, or I don't want to reinforce that behavior. And it's a typical response. I understand that completely. But the reality is, it's the inability to accept yourself with whatever fault you perceive that you have that's preventing you from moving forward. And I usually tell people, you know, you'll figure that out in just a few minutes, because you'll feel it in your body. You'll feel it in the body's energy system as you begin to embrace it. And my feeling personally, after, you know, having worked with so many people and having experienced it so much myself, is that there's a big part of physical illness that's directly related to an inability to forgive oneself, an inability to accept oneself even with the illness. This fear that somehow we've caused it, or, you know, something we did or didn't do has caused some kind of serious illness, and the inability to embrace ourselves and forgive ourselves if we think we need to be forgiven is what really releases us from the binds of our own inability to love ourselves. So I think it's the most powerful part of the treatment. It's something that, if I'm going to use anything, if I'm sitting on a plane and I'm feeling nervous, you know, I will simply just repeat to myself, even though I feel nervous, I deeply accept these feelings. Even though I feel upset about the argument even though I hate Joe right now, I completely accept those feelings, so that it's in accepting them that we can then release them. One of the things you can use EFT for is conflicts with other people. And one of the first things that you can use EFT for is dealing with the charge you feel. Like, let's say you just had an argument with somebody and you feel all charged up, or you feel, you know, you get your buttons pushed. You can use EFT to help put you into a calm and centered place, which is the only place you need to be in order to heal the relationship in some way. Because, you know, when there's defensiveness, there is no communication. And defensiveness is really like a block of energy. It's like a block in the energy system. It's a wall of energy that says, you know, stay away from me. We're not going to work this out. So you can use EFT in that way to really calm yourself down, so you can enter an exchange. Those of us who use EFT, and as it becomes more well known, it really will be used first and foremost as a preventative measure. You know, if you're trying to lose weight, you'll use the tapping every day to support you in maintaining balance in the body and making healthy food choices. Or if you have a history of illness in your family and you find yourself nervous about getting that illness, you'll use EFT to treat some of that anxiety and fear. I think it'll also be the frontline treatment for people who are dealing with illness. Or it'll be part of the protocol of dealing with illness, that we won't just treat the physical body, but we'll treat the energetic body as well. And I certainly hope that it'll be used in schools with children. I think that that's a really wonderful, there's such a wonderful opportunity there, teaching children how to use EFT. And even more important, as I often say to audiences, teaching adults, because the adults in our lives are the ones that influence the children. And the more we can teach this technique to adults and really help them to overcome their fears and their concerns and the blocks that they have about living a great life, the more they're going to pass on those techniques. And I've used EFT with children before. It's wonderful for nightmares and anxiety that kids have going to school. I remember one time my husband Michael used the technique with a good friend of ours whose daughter had to go through an invasive medical procedure, and it was really traumatic. And he taught her, the mother, the tapping technique, and she used it while they were in the hospital. And the doctors, as well as the nurses and the mother, were amazed at how this young child just sailed through the test when normally it was a very upsetting and traumatic experience. So I also see a wonderful opportunity for using EFT in hospital settings, pre and post surgery, with chemotherapy treatments, and so that we're not only helping people to be more relaxed emotionally when they're dealing with these difficult kinds of things, but also helping to speed up the healing of the body. So if you're trying EFT for the first time, the one piece of advice I would give you is don't try and be perfect. It is a forgiving tool. You don't have to tap in the perfect spot. You don't have to say the perfect words. If you're just trying it in the beginning, just allow yourself to just go through the protocol and see what happens. Notice how you feel in your body, and be willing to experiment. Be willing to, just play around with it and notice how you feel in your body, or notice how your thoughts shift. Very often when someone's stuck in a place, I'll ask them to close their eyes, take a deep breath, and just connect their head and their heart. Try and bring their consciousness down into their body. And then I'll ask them a question, and I'll ask them to just say the first thing that comes to mind, because most of us, will overthink things. I think the same thing can happen with tapping, that very often I'll say that to a client, or I'll say that to an audience member. They'll close their eyes, they'll breathe, I'll ask them the question, and you see a little smile come to their face. And I know that little smile means something just occurred to them that they don't want to say, so they're going to say the next thing. And it's the same thing with tapping. I think it's really important that anything you feel resistance to saying or owning is the thing you should be tapping on. Because the old saying, anything you resist persists. Anything that you feel hesitant to say out loud, excuse me, if something comes up that you don't want to say out loud, or you don't want to own, or you don't want to say you accept about yourself, that's the very thing you want to tap about, because that's the good news is that's leading you right to why you're stuck. And that's leading you, it's shining a light on the place that needs your love and your compassion and your self-acceptance more than anything else. And the quicker you can get there and give yourself that, the quicker you're going to dissolve that block and get on with your life.